Arctic.
E-commerce giant Amazon planning to jump into the big box retail store game. Engadget reports that the company is planning in a document says it will build a massive retail space in the Chicago suburbs to compete with rivals like Target and Walmart. The idea includes in-store shopping along with the added feature of acting as a fulfillment center, something Amazon already has set up in its Whole Foods stores. The Chicago area retail store will be opened in Orland Park. President Trump posted a chart on social media last night with numbers included in the December jobs report. It came 12 hours before they were publicly released and shows the sluggish December hiring concluded a year of weak employment gains.
The chart shows how many jobs were added in the private sector since he took office. The president is typically briefed on the jobs data the day before it's released, but a federal rule prevents anyone from the executive branch from commenting on it for at least 30 minutes after it's out. Releasing the data early can have market-moving implications. The White House and Bureau of Labor Statistics haven't yet responded to requests for comment about the post. Elizabeth Schulze, ABC News, Washington.
The CDC shows flu levels nationwide still surging and breaking records for children visiting the doctor. The CDC estimates there have been at least 15 million illnesses, 180,000 hospitalizations, and 7,400 deaths from flu so far this season. That's up from 5,300 deaths from the prior week. I'm Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
Quiet down. Here she comes.
Surprise! Your accountant just emailed to say your quarterly taxes are way higher than you were expecting.
At Progressive, we know small business owners don't usually like surprises because they cost you money. But a good surprise that could save you money? Getting discounts with a commercial auto quote from Progressive.
Also, your favorite employee is leaving. They're going to pursue their dream of being a veterinarian.
Surprise yourself. See if you can save in as little as 8 minutes at ProgressiveCommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
It's now 4:05 at News Talk KVNU, and I'm Will Feelright with your local headlines and a check of that weather forecast coming up in just a minute. It looks like we're going to enjoy some sunshine heading into the weekend. Well, the American Red Cross of Utah and the Hutchinson family have been hosting a memorial blood drive this afternoon to honor Xylee Hutchison. She was the 14-year-old Hiram girl who died in that crash in Providence back in November. Now, the event is continuing until 5 o'clock at the Providence South Stake at 360 East, 450 North. Now, Xylee had received more than 20 units of blood during emergency efforts to try to save her life back in November, including 8 units while being airlifted to the hospital. Now, Cassandra Hutchison, Xylee's mother, said that this is something only possible because of the kindness and generosity of blood donors. Now, Michael Smalden, who's executive director of the Red Cross Northern Utah chapter, noted that trauma victims can quickly deplete hospital inventories, and this drive is aiming to restock supplies for emergency and cancer patients. Now, anyone's invited to stop by this afternoon up until 5 o'clock. That's again at the Providence South Stake at 360 East, 450 North. Well, in other news around the state, a 24-year-old Orem man has been arrested after allegedly shooting a lifelong friend in the kneecaps because he felt disrespected during a fight. Victor Enrique Gonzalez Rodriguez faces multiple charges now, including felony of a firearm and aggravated assault resulting in serious bodily injury. Now, Orem police responded to a report of a shooting that happened at a garage where they found the victim suffering from a single gunshot wound in each leg. Now, according to a police affidavit, Gonzalez Rodriguez told investigators the victim was a brother he had known since elementary school. Now, the two had been drinking when an argument turned into a physical brawl. Now, the suspect allegedly admitted to deliberately placing a handgun against the victim's knees and firing. And a local Preston woman has officially captured a Guinness World Record for the world's largest collection of heart-shaped containers. It's a feat that spans over 40 years. Now, Susan West of Preston received her official certificate from the organization after documenting a collection that includes over 1,560 unique boxes. Now, the collection, which includes items made of ceramic, crystal, wood, and even chocolate, ranges in size from thumbnail-sized charms all the way up to large cookie jars. Now, the verification process required West and her husband, Ralph, to spend over 10 hours photographing every individual item and then providing written documentation for the organization. Well, we're going to continue to see clear skies overnight tonight as temperatures are going to be cold down into the low teens overnight. And then tomorrow, sunny skies continuing with temperatures in the mid-30s for Saturday, high 30s coming on Sunday. It looks like Monday we'll still see temperatures warming up over the next couple of days. It doesn't look like we're going to see any snow, though, in the forecast as a high-pressure system keeping all of the storms out of the area. And I'm Will Feelwright with your KVNU local headlines.
We start each new year filled with hope and prosperity for things to come. At Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology, it's no different. Dr. Danes is so grateful to get to call Cache Valley home and continue to offer his services to the wonderful people that live in our beautiful valley. He wants to help you start your new year off right by improving your hearing, which over the course of time will help improve your quality of life. Give them a call at 435-753-4327 or 753-HERE to schedule an appointment, or you can visit them online at cachevalleyhearing.com.
Breaking news and stimulating talk. News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM.
Everyone has an estate, but do you have an estate plan? This is Jace Allen, Northern Utah's estate planning attorney. At Allen Law Office, wills and trusts are what we do. If you've been putting it off, now is the time to get it done. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones, protect your legacy, protect your assets. Start today at cashlegal.com or just search Allen Law Office. Wills and trusts are what we do. Allen Law Office.
KVNU's For the People with Jason Williams and Bill Walter.
And it is Utah known as the fraud capital of the world. Not because we have more people committing fraud, but because we have so many people falling for it.
Going beneath the headlines and connecting you to the newsmakers.
The radio is a great way to get the word out to a lot of people in an emergency. So we thank you for your help and being a partner with us.
For the People on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, online at 610kvnu.com and on the KVNU mobile app.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. Got a lot to talk about today. It is it's a beautiful day in Cache Valley. Okay, it's a little chilly, honestly, quite chilly, but there is so much going on. For the People movie show coming up later on, and we've got a lot to talk about there as well. Oscars buzz, and the streaming services are just really giving the traditional theater movie distribution world a run for its money. We'll talk about that, what the ramifications of that are, and whether that is sustainable as well. The theaters are not dying. That's something everyone likes to say, I know, but it's just not the case. But they are under some pressure to step things up a little bit, make the theater-going experience a little more fun for those involved, especially considering the cost. A family of four is going to spend upwards of $60, $70, and that's if you buy the cheap concessions or none. You can keep it down to as low as $50 for a family of four, but that's $60. But that's still, I remember, for my family's budget when I was a young kid, that would be kind of a once a month kind of thing, and obviously theaters want to get people in more often than that. So what are they doing to try and, make that happen? Well, we'll talk about it. Also recap some of the legislation Cache Valley lawmakers are working on for the legislative session here in the first hour of the show. But I wanted to also talk about this. I don't claim to be an expert on this, neither does the governor, but it is something that a lot of people are talking about in various different ways, and I guess generally you could say this is a conversation about the state of the world for men, for especially young men or boys, even if you want to go into the younger years, and some of the challenges for men and boys in our society right now are not unique to men and boys. Social media, the always connected news cycle, young children having access to stories from around the globe, and how that influences not just their, as they age into adulthood, their politics, but also before, when they're the age they don't care about politics yet, how that might influence their sleep and their anxiety. And it's that, of course, isn't unique to adult men or young men, but it is a part of the whole picture, just like it is for young women and adult women. So there, some of the things that are discussed in a lot of these studies and published research sets that are getting the governor of Utah's attention are not unique to men, but there are some things. And so Governor Cox was recently part of a conversation on health, vocation, and very vague, but purpose for men in America. And this was something, it was called the Men and Boys Wellbeing Symposium. It was hosted by the Sutherland Institute, good friends of the show and weekly contributors, with their Tuesday sneak preview of their Defending Ideas episode each week for our listeners. And they brought a bunch of folks together that have kind of worked in this world for a long time. And there are critics. We'll get to that. There are people who say that this is kind of making much ado out of nothing. But here are some of the things that they discussed. A lot of surveying shows that a significant share of American men, adult men, not young boys, not teenagers, we're talking, I believe they said they broke the survey results down to age 20 and older. And then they also, break it down by 35 to 45, 45 to 55, et cetera. And we'll talk more about the differences there. But overall, what they found is a significant share of American men feel disconnected from societal roles. And that like every group of people, positive role models are important, but also is something that might be unique to today. Positive role models for men are hard to find. Cited in some of the presentation by the Sutherland Institute is, you might not be familiar with his name, but I'll just be blunt. He's an atrocious individual, but he's a social media star. His name's Andrew Tate. He first came to fame in the fighting world, the ultimate fighting world, but then he had to run to another country after he was charged with, I believe, multiple times over, accused of rape. And then eventually he was actually charged with human trafficking. I mean, this is, and if you've seen any of his social media, I don't encourage you to go look for it, but if you run across it, he's quite a character, to say the least. And he was brought up as an example of someone who is very popular with, teen and young adult boys right now, but is a horrible role model. No parent would want their young boy to aspire to be someone like this, was said at the conference. So that's one example, but there were many others given. Certain celebrities were talked about as, that have shown to be very popular with young men. That aren't necessarily, someone you'd want, not as bad as Andrew Tate, but still someone you necessarily wouldn't want them aspiring to be. And a significant part of this conversation focused around, what happens in the home. And a bit of a lecture for fathers, to be honest with you. One of the experts during this symposium said, we need to talk about the fact that young boys are finding role models on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok so frequently, and what that might say about, are they not finding role models at home? It wasn't an accusation against, all American fathers. It was saying that this might be part of the problem. Our fathers stepping up the way they should. And in some of the survey results discussed, around a third of American men, adult men, feel unmoored from anchoring community institutions. And now that's kind of a vague concept, right? What does that even mean? That was from a Sutherland Institute survey, one they conducted on their own, working in partnership with the Utah Office of Families, which runs out of the governor's office. And they expanded on that. They explained that anchoring community institutions. Obviously here in Utah, one of the primary anchoring community institutions is going to be the LDS Church. And survey results showed that a lot of men in Utah feel disconnected from that a little bit. The reasons are not, obvious, and that was a big part of the discussion. But the survey results were pretty clear. 3 in 10 men surveyed by the Sutherland Institute here in Utah said they did not feel confident about having a positive place in society, and do not have anyone with whom they discuss openly their mental health or this feeling of disconnection. Sutherland published this, by the way, as Missing Anchors, How Some Men Drift from Health, Vocation, and Purpose. And this was actually a focus of a recent sneak preview we played on the show from Sutherland Institute, and you can hear that still via the podcast. Again, they supply that every Tuesday here on the show, so you can hear what Nick's recap of what the survey said. But you can find it yourself at sutherlandinstitute.org. Click on Reports, and it's right there at the top as the most recent. Missing Anchors, How Some Men Drift from Health, Vocation, and Purpose. So running through all of these discussions, again, it came back again and again to the need for better male role models. And they mentioned over and over actual fathers in the home, but also teachers, men of faith, co-workers, friends, others willing to befriend and bolster the sense of place and importance for young men and boys. And during the discussion, Richard Reeves, he was president of the American Institute for Boys and Men and author of a book of Boys and Men that discusses this in greater detail, a few years old but still relevant. And he said during the discussion at this symposium that, quote, the path pointing young men towards meaning and prosperity is slipping away as the core institutions are starting to erode a little bit. And he listed some, civic engagement, being a part of your community, volunteer work, being a member of a church and church attendance, of course, and then marriage or building a family in general. He said, with it, there's a sense, at least, if not an actuality, that those are eroding. And he was clear to couch that a little bit, Reeves. He said that he personally believes it's just a sense that they're eroding. He doesn't believe they're actually eroding. But he said there's a sense of that, and that's leading to, men feeling unmoored, disconnected, unanchored. And he talked a little bit about, the need. So someone in the audience during one of the videos that was sent my way said, is this also an opportunity for a conversation about how men gauge their own self-worth? Might there be a place for a discussion about it being unhealthy for men to gauge their own self-worth based solely on whether they, for example, have a leadership role in their community, or whether they have a lot of people turning to them for advice? That was one comment made. But Reeves said it's different than that. He said that the research he has seen doesn't suggest that it has anything to do with men feeling as if their place in society has been reduced in importance. They're no longer, top guy on the totem pole. He said that the research he's seen suggests that it has more to do with men feeling that not just maybe the loss of that, but that there hasn't been a replacement for that. They just sometimes don't feel important. There was also discussion a lot of changes in the labor market. Could some of this be related to back in the 1950s, and I guess you could say even up until the 80s, men were traditionally the primary breadwinners, or more often than not, the primary breadwinners in the household. And now that's it's more of a 50-50 split. In fact, there are an increasing number of men who actually make less than their wives, and men who decide to be the one that, if someone, has to stay home for the kids and your wife makes more money than you, well, obviously, why would you not be the one to stay home with the kids? And Reeves said that doesn't seem to be the driving force of this unmooring. So there was a lot of, I put it this way, they discussed the problem in, as much detail as is possible. And then they admitted that there aren't really any clear solutions. Governor Cox, though, a part of this discussion, said he believes that there are some obvious solutions. And he says that they've seen some of this through the state's own health department surveying on mental health. So that part of the discussion, things get a little more specific. We'll talk about it right after this.
News Talk 610 AM, 102.1 FM, KVNU.
From corner to capital, Utah's progress is built by the people who show up. The dreamers, the doers, and the ones who don't quit. Bank of Utah is proud to stand with them. With local decisions, personal relationships, and over 70 years of helping communities grow. For the people, the places, the progress. For all of Utah. Bank of Utah. Member FDIC.
At Canyon Plumbing and Heating, we don't believe in quick fixes that will cost you more down the line. As a locally owned, locally operated company serving Cache Valley since 2005, we're invested in this community and our customers. That's why we take the time to find the root of the problem and fix it right the first time. Call 435-881-6952 or visit canyonph.net. Canyon Plumbing and Heating, local service you can trust.
Guess which energy source is truly the cleanest for the environment, is affordable, abundant, and is ready right now to do what all the other clean energy sources hope to do someday? It's propane. Yes, propane. To learn more about what propane can do for you, check out the State of Energy right here, Saturday mornings at 6:30. Also, the propane industry is set to grow by $50 billion over the next 5 years. Go to findapropanejob.com.
Discussing a symposium that took place this week with Governor Cox joining experts from think tanks and research organizations from around the country, as well as the Sutherland Institute, who hosted the event. It was a symposium on American men and young boys. And again, a lot of the discussion centered around describing the problem, men feeling as if they aren't often sure of their place or space in today's world, and some potential obvious reasons for that. Changes in the labor market, as I mentioned, but they no longer being the sole breadwinner, or sometimes not even the person who's making the most money in the household. But Reeves and other experts said they don't believe that that's really getting to the root of this. So they described the problem well, but then kind of floundered a bit when the audience started asking, well, okay, what are the solutions? And Governor Cox stepped up to fill that role, supplying some of the solutions. And he said he had come to these opinions through looking at some of the data he's seen as governor through, similar research and surveying that the Utah Department of Health has done on mental health, and in an effort to specifically combat suicide in Utah, which is, data suggests that it's an area where the problem is growing the fastest, numbers-wise, is with adult men age 40 and up. And you don't have to be a behavioral scientist to make a pretty educated guess on what might be behind that, the governor said. It's that, men, we haven't been raised to talk. And we know that one of the best things to combat suicide ideation, mental health issues in general, is connecting to someone who you can talk with, your spouse, a friend, a coworker, a mental health professional. There are so many options, but Cox says the data suggests men, maybe this will change as these younger kids age into adult men, because they've grown up in a world where it's more acceptable to talk about these things for men. But he said, men age 35 and up likely grew up in a world where men just, you Gary Coopered up. He didn't say that. I'm stealing that actually from a Sopranos episode, but it's a great way to describe it. Gary Coopered up, and you strengthen your jaw, and you cry later, if at all. And Cox was basically describing that as possibly one of the biggest contributors to this. He said that, so the governor said during his presentation, he said, one of the mistakes we've made over the past couple of years, a couple of decades actually, he said, is blurring a line. He said there's a lot of talk right now about toxic masculinity and the downsides of toxic masculinity, and those are, worthwhile discussions. Because it's not something to be proud of if you're unable to talk with other people and express yourself and share what you're really experiencing and feeling. That's unhealthy. That can become like a pressure cooker inside of you and lead to some really bad behavior and dark thoughts. So he said that's not something to be proud of, and that's an example of toxic masculinity. But he said the problem is we've defined and talked so much about toxic masculinity that it's possibly left men, especially young men, feeling a bit adrift. Because we're not talking a lot about positive masculinity, or even, doing a good job of defining, okay, what is modern masculinity? If it's not the old Gary Cooper, don't say a word, just have some peanut butter and struggle through it, just get some protein and bury your feelings. If that's not healthy, and experts agree that is not, then, and yet that is how masculinity has always been defined, and this is just one example the governor gave, then that leaves kind of a hole in the understanding, especially for young men. Okay, what is masculinity then? What does it mean to be a man? Other experts on hand said, part of the solution might be, so there was a lot of reference to an old book called Men Are From Mars, or Women Are From Venus, Men Are From Mars. And they talked about that as maybe one of the most harmful socially viral events, the publication of that book, because it reinforces this idea that men and women are so different. And so some of the experts said that's part of maybe the solution, is realizing men and women aren't that different. Maybe we've defined men and women too differently in our societal constructs. But at the same time, there are some ways in which men and women are very different. And oftentimes, again, we've defined toxic masculinity, the governor said, but we've done not such a great job of defining positive masculinity. The governor said that's why he believes that a lot of young men feel adrift and are asking themselves, is there something wrong with me all the time? He said the keys to supporting young men in his mind are, social institutions, faith groups, scouting groups, local neighborhood groups, and of course he echoed, positive male role models. And those are obvious things, but he and Dr. Reeves also suggested that ensuring that mental health institutions actually train providers to deal specifically with male mental health issues and how to talk about those in a way that older and younger men will be more likely to respond to positively and open up. And even to increase the percentage of K through 12 teachers who would be trained to be able to talk with a young teen, obviously maybe struggling with some things. He said, Governor Cox said, I'm not saying we've gone too far in the work we've done to be more inclusive of women and the minority groups and things like that. But he said, we do also have to understand that young men need positive male role models. And we've spent all of our energy talking about everything else. It's maybe time to talk about this. Dr. Reeves wrapped up by saying, he kept using the word unanchored. He said, I use that word because it's the language of the current report, obviously. But he said also it just fits. In most cases in my work and my research, the doctor said, literally, this can become fatal. Anyone, male or female, young or old, feeling completely unanchored, disconnected, not valuable, not worthy of taking up space, not worthy of using words in their own minds to express themselves or be heard by someone else, can be fatal. We know that. And he said, I think there's space for some civic institutions to take on, what he called a gendered role. But we need to do this without taking away from anyone else. So there's also a lot of discussion of fatherhood. If you want to see this, it's a really interesting discussion. Don't expect to come away from this, the video that Sutherland has put out from the symposium, with any clear answers. If you're a parent out there raising young boys, don't expect to walk away from this thinking, oh, I know what to do now. But I think it's a really important discussion, and it is illuminating in a lot of ways. One example, I'll leave you with this. Ian Rowe, an educator something academies, Vertex Partnership Academies, doesn't matter. He's an educator. He's also a senior fellow on child development at American Enterprise Institute. And he said that one thing they have had success with is promoting tools that help them kind of catch up in this world. And he echoed the same thing as Dr. Reeves, kind of saying, look, we've done a great job of focusing on those traditionally slipping through the cracks, young women, minority groups, people coming out of impoverished families or cycles of intergenerational poverty. And that's important, and that's good. But he said, we need to do the same for young men, because they are slipping through their own cracks. And so he said, instead of for young men, he gave one example. He said, we overemphasize failure and crisis. Maybe instead we should be talking about, a reverence for certain types of success. We should be talking about that in America today, to be a man, opening up and talking about your feelings with your spouse or a coworker or a friend is a very manly thing to do. Not traditionally the way that's been seen. It was a really, really interesting conversation. So check it out. I've linked to it on our Facebook page. And for the People movie show coming up, we'll be talking Oscars, buzz, and how the streaming services are really giving the big theaters and distribution chains a run for their money. So that's coming up next, right after this look at the news with KVNU's Will Feel Right.
Well, thank you, Jason. The Salt Lake City Police Department says that investigators are still struggling investigating a homicide earlier this week due to uncooperative witnesses, as they're searching for multiple suspects involved in that shooting that left 2 people dead and 6 wounded. Now, the gunfire erupted Wednesday night outside a meeting house of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the Rose Park neighborhood during a funeral service. Now, Chief Brian Redd stated that the violence likely stemmed from a dispute between funeral attendees rather than a targeted attack on the church. Now, while several individuals have been detained for questioning, Redd confirmed the primary shooters remain at large. Now, Redd also noted the investigation is being hindered by a lack of cooperation from those present. Police have not confirmed if the incident was gang-related, but emphasized that there is no ongoing threat to the general public. And a tragic accident earlier today claiming the life of a woman. Multiple lanes of Interstate 84 through Weber Canyon were closed early this morning after an incident in which a woman was killed while trying to help another group that had been involved in a crash along the highway. Now, following an accident in the westbound lanes near milepost 96, a man and a woman had stopped a truck to help. Now, while helping with the incident, the Utah Highway Patrol said the woman went over a highway barrier and fell to her death. Now, it's not known why the woman had went over the barrier, and she has not been identified yet, pending notification of family. And a judge ruling yesterday that prosecutors may use portions of a notebook that were found in Corey Richan's home during her upcoming murder trial, provided that they meet specific requirements in court. Now, 3rd District Judge Richard Mrazek stated yesterday that 5 pages of the orange notebook which allegedly contain Richan's firsthand account of the day her husband died could be admitted if the state makes a showing. Now, prosecutors argue that the notes contain details about Eric Richen's movements and consumption that suggest that he was poisoned with fentanyl. Now, defense attorneys contested, though, that the notebook does not make sense for the trial. Now, Judge Mrazek also ruled that he would exclude evidence of alleged domestic abuse by Eric Richens. He called that evidence irrelevant to the case. Now, Richens, who is 35, is facing charges of aggravated murder and insurance fraud. Jury selection is scheduled to begin February 10th. Well, checking your weather here at the bottom of the hour, we're going to see mostly clear skies as a high-pressure system is going to start keeping temperatures very cold during the day and really cold overnight. And it doesn't look like we're going to see any chance of moisture, at least in the next 7 days. As clear skies are going to continue, temperatures staying right around the mid to low 30s through the next several days, with overnight temperatures into the low teens. And weather this hour is brought to you by Dr. Keith Nielsen. If you've suffered with knee pain, don't suffer any longer. Yeah, Dr. Keith Nielsen can provide you the Omnibotic knee replacement system. It boasts a 97% patient satisfaction rate, and it's available right here in Logan. Yeah, you don't have to leave Cache Valley for pain relief. Get more information by visiting his website. It's drkeithnielsenortho.com. And I'm Will Feelright with your KVNU local headlines.
ABC News, I'm Michelle Franzen. Following the deadly shooting of a Minneapolis woman by an ICE agent, the White House posted a link to the officer's cell phone video of his perspective. Federal authorities say he fired in self-defense. Some witnesses dispute that claim. ABC's Armando Garcia is in Minneapolis, where protests continue tonight, and has more on the officer.
We know that Jonathan Ross was part of a very specialized subgroup under the umbrella of ICE, essentially called the Special Response Team. This is a very highly trained group in tactical situations, very highly trained in firearm skills. We also know that he was involved in an incident just a few months ago in June where he was dragged by a car. DHS said that he suffered serious injuries.
In Portland, Oregon, another ICE officer involved shooting last night injured 2 people. The city's police chief says the man and woman are in stable condition and confirmed they had ties to an alleged gang. President Trump met with oil executives today discussing the sale of Venezuela's oil.
Bringing Wall Street to Main Street. From your local experts in downtown Logan, this is the Adams Wealth Advisors Market Report.
Hello, this is David Kastner with Adams Wealth Advisors. Stocks finished the week on a strong note following the latest jobs report, which pointed to a labor market that remains stable, neither overheating nor weakening. That balance has given the Fed little reason to cut rates when it meets later this month, while also offering limited justification for keeping rates restrictive for an extended period. Today, the Dow Jones Industrials rose 238 points to close at 49,504, while the Nasdaq gained 1.02%, both finishing up the week at about 2.25%. The S&P 500 advanced 0.65% and added about 1.6% this week. The rally so far this year has been broad-based, with the economically sensitive sectors leading the advance. Utilities have lagged after a surprisingly strong run-up last year as it was swept up in the AI trade. In the bond market, trading was mixed with signs of a flattening yield curve. The 2-year Treasury yield rose about 5 basis points to 3.54% this week, while the 10-year Treasury fell about 3 basis points to 4.17%. Cryptocurrencies continue to show weakness. The Bitcoin slipped about 0.8%, hovering just above the 90,000 level. But gold had another strong session, climbing 1.21% above 4,500, once again approaching an all-time high. Economic data released today showed that the unemployment rate ticked lower, but the job creation number came in below expectations, as businesses are neither hiring nor firing workers. While normally the low number of new jobs might signal slowing in the economy, but recent economic growth data has reflected strength, including the ISM report on services earlier in the week that far exceeded economist expectations. Today's housing starts missed forecasts, but building permits exceeded expectations. And the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index rose, with a survey pointing to modest improvement in economic conditions. All in all, these reports are providing a nice backdrop for the economy and markets as we jump into the new year. We'll be back next week with some important economic news on retail sales and inflation. Until then, have a great weekend.
That's your update from Adams Wealth Advisors, guiding your financial future one day at a time. For personalized help planning yours, reach out to us at 435-752-1702. See you soon, Cache Valley. Advisory services offered through Adams Wealth Management, a registered investment advisor. For important disclosures and more information, visit adamswealthadvisors.com.
On the next Handle on the Law.
How about this? What if I run for president and I say I'm the best one, and I have a radio station and I talk to millions of people? So, Tim, by the way, I still don't know how to spell your name because I don't care. I'm running for president. Here's how to spell my name. How?
Saturday afternoons from 1 to 4 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102.1 FM, the voice of Northern Utah.
Legislative session getting to a much more aggressive start than I would have predicted as far as, the big broad stuff. I'm sure, there's still plenty of time for controversial stuff to make itself known. But actually, in doing some serious work in the first couple of weeks of the year. Now, of course, no bills can pass until officially in session, and once in session, the bills must pass by 11:59 p.m. The first Friday in March. And so the 45-day session, they try to get as much as they can done, for better or worse. And what that means is oftentimes big, broad attempts to address overall quality of life in Utah become interim task force studies and things like that, and take years to do. And that can be a good thing. But one thing that has been an interim task force and long-term study, going way back to when they first launched the intergenerational poverty study, which I think that was like 2012, so a while ago. The legislature has continued to kind of work on this, and some of that work has evolved as the problems have, and where it's currently at is trying to. So, over the last 10 years, Utah fell from the number one state in the nation for birth rate consistently, year after year after year, and we dropped down to 10th place. It was a slow slide, more than a drop, but it happened, over a 10-year period. But in 2025, we were officially 10th in the nation for our ranking in the national birth rate. Now, that's not bad, but lawmakers are saying, okay, what is behind this? Well, actually, researchers are saying what's behind this, and the lawmakers are taking the results of that research and saying, okay, what can we do about this, if anything? So Utah is not at risk of losing, any kind of family-friendly state status or anything like that. But this is, relatively a pretty rapid decline, the Speaker of the House said. And of course, the reasons could be multitude, but exploring them is probably important. So just to be clear on what the data actually says, before we get into what lawmakers are considering doing about it, or doing to try and turn it around, I guess. Utah went from having the most births per woman in the state to the fastest falling fertility rate in the country. Again, we're still, we're only number 10. We're still way up there in the ranking, state by state. But we had the fastest falling fertility rate over the last 10 years of any state. And at the same time, over the same 10 years, we had the fastest rise in housing prices. We currently sit here in 2026 at the 9th priciest state for buying a home or renting a home or renting anything. And also, when it comes to raising families in general, we've talked about this on the show many times, but Utah is known as a child care desert. Well, Utah has large areas that are known as child care deserts, meaning that when you look at the population, the number of children, and then contrast that with the number of child care options, it's obvious that there is not enough. Meaning that keeps people out of the labor market, meaning that families are running on less fuel, less money each month because only one person can work. And so that can hold them back from purchasing a home, especially in the early years of raising a family. And so there are a lot of, obvious things that come from that. And so Utah House Republican Speaker Mike Schultz said his caucus, he's not the one pushing this, but he, speaking, as part of a legislative session kickoff press conference, he said, that his caucus has decided that this year that's going to be a top priority to see what they can do to remove some of these barriers to starting a family. They believe, again, that housing prices, to some extent, tax burden. Utah has a pretty light tax burden. Overall, we're 14th highest tax burden in the nation. So, it's hard to argue that is the biggest reason that people might be holding off on starting a family or deciding not to in general. Or this was pointed out as well, this might be not even people holding off on starting a family, but maybe people having one kid instead of two or two kids instead of four. So, a lot of different variables here. But either way, over a 10-year period, we dropped very quickly in fertility rate here in Utah. And so these are what they've landed on. Housing prices, lack of child care options. Democrats in the House and the Senate, House and State Senate have said that they should also be looking at, parental leave, maternity and paternity leave. Is it long enough in Utah? Should it be longer? Because that can be a huge issue too. If you don't get enough leave to actually do a good job of, that first few weeks or months of having a newborn. A lot of times, especially if someone is invested through college education and student loans and all of that in their career, that could be a deciding factor for them as well. So that's going to be a big part of the discussion. One lawmaker said the cost of living in Utah, she felt, was the biggest threat in general to Utahness, she called it. That was Majority Whip Candace Pierucci, Republican from Harriman. And the chamber, the overall chamber, Democrats and Republicans alike, are getting all on board with this. They're pretty limited, to be honest, on what they can do policy-wise. Tax burden they can do, but if that's not a huge contributor to why people are deciding not to have families, at least more often here in Utah, or having smaller families, I don't know that the tax burden going from 14th highest in the nation, which is already pretty low, to 10th. I don't know if that's going to make a big difference. If you jump to to where you're getting to where you have the lowest tax burden, you're in the under 10 for lowest tax burden. That would be great. But it's childcare. I can definitely see that. If you think about what parents are facing these days, childcare options be a huge factor. I think it's home prices. Again, not an expert. I haven't looked at all the data. My gut tells me that the fact that people can't afford as easily to get into a home or even to rent a home or rent a two-bedroom apartment, that's obviously going to stop. It's going to stop people from getting married in the first place. If they do get married, it's going to stop them from having a child, at least until they have better space to do so or can afford to do so. But that's going to be tough as well. What can the state really do to quickly drive down housing prices? We're building a lot, and the state can grease those wheels, but even that is a 5 to 10 year plan. There's no real urgency to this. Again, it was a rapid decline in birth rate, but it doesn't mean Utah is going to be a ghost town 10 years from now. Nothing like that. But obviously, something is causing it. So now, a really quick note, if they do decide to dig into changes to tax policy, some of the trial ballooned ideas that have been thrown out there, increases or expansion to the state's primary residential exemption. I don't currently know where that is. I believe that it's currently 45%. I could be wrong about that. Should have looked it up before we started talking here. But I believe county assessors exempt up to 45% of what they call fair market value of a home from taxation. So lawmakers could bump that up to 55% and keep taxation down on the home at least. Again, that's not been determined. No exact numbers have been thrown out. Speaker Schultz did say that he believes there's enough support for all of this to flip the property tax burden from 55% falling on residentials and 45% on commercial. That's right. It's 45 on commercial. Flip that so that 55% falls on commercial owners and only 45% falls on residential. So right now, commercial owners are getting a bigger tax break on property than residential, and he believes there's support in the House this session to flip that. So commercial properties would see hypothetical here. I don't know what the exact numbers will end up being, but commercial properties could hypothetically see a 10% increase in their property tax burden, and residential owners would see a 10% decrease from the state, at least, on property tax burden. So that's one option they can do. Again, I don't know if that's enough. Maybe. I mean, that is a significant amount of money for a lot of families, but I don't know if that's enough. I think they're going to have to go broader than this. I think they're going to have to – I think the state's going to have to pour a lot of money into child care. I think that the state and the trouble is there's from what we hear so far at least, just working with revenue projections that they're working with a pretty tight budget this year. Interestingly enough, thrown out in this by one lawmaker, kind of a from left field, but could be applicable. But one lawmaker said, we need to look at lowering everything we can, including the gas tax rate. He said that's one that hits every family, but it's also, the way they're paying for roads. So you create, kind of a problem, a catch-22 problem for yourself there. But one lawmaker said that's something that they should look at in how the state responds to all of this. So. Again, an interesting discussion. No idea what exactly is going to come out of this, and it's early. They have until the first week of March before any specific bills would actually have to pass anything to make this happen. But that's something that's being talked about. And as far as the income tax, the speaker said he said this years ago when he first stepped in as House Speaker. He said he had a goal of getting the income tax rate down below a 4% flat rate. But there is some pushback on that from Republicans in the Senate saying they believe for the time being that it wouldn't be prudent to make changes to the income tax until they kind of see a little more settling in the economy. So we'll see. Tax credits, that's also in the mix as far as the discussion goes, at least. Talking about this is creative, giving businesses a 20% tax credit to create on-site childcare options for their employees, and expanding the child tax credit to include children who are 5 years old and under the age of 1. That's something they dabbled with in 2025, a year ago, but they're talking about expanding that out and making it permanent. So we'll see. Again, this is all just talk at this point, and way early, but a little hint of what one of the big, broad issues of this specific session might be. So keep an eye on this one. This one will be interesting. And we'll be back with more of For the People right after this.
Who do you turn to if you want to change out your wood or pellet stove? Advanced Fireplace and Stove. They were voted the gold medalist for Best of Northern Utah for the 5th year in a row in the fireplace retrofit category. Be ready when the government's next wood and pellet replacement incentives pop up. Advanced Fireplace can help you navigate the paperwork. For more information, call Advanced Fireplace and Stove, 752-7272. Online at advancedfireplaceandstove.com.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
I'm Ed Horrell, author of The Kindness Revolution. I've got a little suggestion for you this week. Take a moment to visit a classroom somewhere. If it takes going to an open house at a school, a PTA meeting, or simply making an appointment to meet with your child's teacher, do it. And while you're there, make it a point to say thank you to as many of the faculty and staff that are supporting the futures of these kids. To learn more, check us out at thekindnessrevolution.net.
Hi, this is Gordon Deal. Monday on This Morning, America's First News. President Trump has been open about his desire to win a Nobel Peace Prize, but what do his actions in Venezuela mean for his prospects? Also, why workers now say they value organizational stability over perks on the job. Is that code language for something else? And legal hurdles and hidden tax traps that confront grieving spouses. Monday on This Morning, America's First News. Monday morning from 4 to 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
That's it for hour one of today's show. Hope you'll stick around, though. The For the People movie show with Andy Morgan of AndyAtTheMovies.com joining us in just a bit. We've got Oscars buzz to talk about. We've got, the streaming services announcing their 2026 release lineup, and they are giving the theaters a run for their money in 2026 with all of the new shows. What might that mean, and how theaters might respond, how your movie-going experience might actually start improving. All of that, part of our discussion as the For the People continues with the For the People movie show and Andy Morgan of AndyAtTheMovies.com right after this here on KVNU Logan.